right. Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, we'd like to give all praise and glory to Yahawah,
BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM, QADASH.
BAHASHAM, QADASH. Double honors to the elders, the apostles, the great millstone, tell us his truth, and salutations to the hopeful elect that's around the four corners of the globe. And the elect begins with 144,000. Yahawah, who the world ignorantly calls God and Jehovah. BAHASHAM is in the name. YAHAWASHI, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. The QADASH, which is the Holy Spirit. We're the brothers of the Great Millstone Chicago camp. I'm the brother YAHAWAH, joined with
Brother AHPARYAM.
Come back at you, brothers and sisters of the household of faith of the hopeful righteous elect with another lesson. And Lord, we hope this lesson be edifying through the spirit and power of YAHAWASHI. Once again, we hope this lesson is edifying. You know, we're just really coming back at you with an account of what's that second Maccabees, the third chapter of you know, the divine intervention that the Lord put up against Heliodorus as he was besieging our people, you know, attacking our people, trying to get the treasure and things like that. But just to think that we're going to ultimately get that divine intervention in this time also, you know, that this is going to be a worse time like never before, man. You know, so expect the miracles, expect, you know, the heavy divine, you know, protection from Yahawah, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, man. So we're going to get into this account, and I buy it real quick. You can grab that Romans 15. It talks about things written aforetime it's written for our learning. Because we can look at these different accounts and say, yeah, how about YAHAWASHI delivered our forefathers? He's going to deliver us as in the same.
This is Romans 15:4. For whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we, through patience and comfort of the scriptures, might have hope.
Right. These things are written aforetime, it's written for our learning. So we look back at these said accounts, and this account that we're going to get into is a big example of that. We can look back on these different things to what? We can look back on these different accounts what? To help us build up our faith. Because what? Yahawah YAHAWASHI came through for our forefathers. It's written in the scriptures how the Lord came through for our forefathers. So we can look on these different accounts and ultimately what? You know, we can gain faith by ultimately reading these accounts. You know, by looking at these said accounts, we know that what? Yahawah YAHAWASHI will come through us for the same, man. You know, these different accounts are ultimately written for us to look back upon and say, and ultimately say, like, damn, hey, the Lord could deliver us also, man.
That's that Sirach, the second chapter.
Yep, that's the spirit. I actually had that on deck too. You want to grab it out? What's that, Sirach 2 and 10?
Grab it. Sirach 2 and 10. Look at the generations of old and see, did ever any trust in the Lord and was confounded? Or did any abide in his fear and was forsaken? Or whom did he ever despise that called upon him?
Right. It says, look at the generations of old, man. This account that we're going to get into is a part of the generations of old, man. How the Lord ultimately came through, man. We look at the different prophets of old, our forefathers, man. You know what? The prophet Daniel, King David, you know, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, Isaiah. You know, these different said prophets that we read about, we ultimately what? The Yahawah YAHAWASHI came through for these said men, man. You know? And ultimately what? They was never disappointed. They was always delivered from their troubles and tribulations. You know? And as the Lord Yahawah YAHAWASHI is going to come to us for the same, man. You know?
That's right.
But we can go ahead and get into that account now if you ain't have anything.
I got real quick. It says Psalms 55:22. Cast thy burden upon the Lord Yahawah, and he shall sustain thee. He shall never suffer the righteous to be moved.
That's right. You got it
so
up.
I got that. You want me to read that context real quick?
Bible for sure.
So this is just the background, the context for this third chapter, second Maccabees. So it says, we're in the time after Alexander's empire divided. Judea is under Seleucid control. So the high priest at the time is Onias III. The temple in Jerusalem is functioning properly and the city is at peace. This is before the major persecutions of Antiochus Epiphanes. It says things haven't exploded yet, but corruption is starting to creep in.
You can read that last part again, brother.
It says this is before the major persecutions of Antiochus Epiphanes.
Right, as you can see in First Maccabees, the first chapter of the, you know, the atrocities that Antiochus Epiphanes ultimately had done, man. You know, coming up against our people.
So this was a time when the city was at peace. You know, this was before Judas and all in his time. Read about. You want me to say verse 1?
It's a lot to this second Maccabees, the third chapter. But
you can hit 1 and then just go down to
start at verse 13 and read all the way down to I'll say 27, 28.
Okay, this second Maccabees 3 and 13. But Heliodorus, because of the king's commandment given him, said that in any wise it must be brought into the king's treasury.
Right, so ultimately Heliodorus was ultimately sent on a mission to ultimately receive the different treasures and different riches the temple ultimately had in Jerusalem, man. Because what? They had money stored up for the orphans, for the widows, things of that nature, man. And ultimately what? Heliodorus was ultimately sent, to grab that treasure, man.
That's right. So it says, verse 14, so at the day which he appointed, he entered into order this matter. Wherefore there was no small agony throughout the whole city. But the priests, prostrating themselves before the altar in their priest's vestments, called unto heaven upon him that made a law concerning things given to be kept, that they should safely be preserved for such as had committed them to be kept.
Yep. Keep going on.
Then whoso had looked the high priest in the face, it would have wounded his heart. For his countenance and the changing of his color, the inward agony of his mind. For the man was so,
was in constant fear, man, of what was getting ready to happen. But you got it out.
He knew that the temple, he thought the temple was about to be, desecrated,
Mm-hmm.
That was a very holy thing unto Yahawah. So the high priest is just, that's why he's reacting, like this. So it says, verse 18, others ran flocking out of their houses to the general supplication because the place was like to come into contempt. And the women, girt with sackcloth under their breasts, abounded in the streets, and the virgins that were kept in ran, some to the gates and some to the walls, and others looked out of the windows, and all, holding their hands toward heaven, made supplication.
Yep. You got it out. I'm almost to my destination.
So the whole city, began to lament, call upon YAHAWASHI. So verse 20, it says, and all holding their hands toward heaven made supplication. Right? So that's what we got to do as well at all times.
Yep.
Unto YAHAWASHI.
And right, that's what we're doing these times also, man, because I had quoted that Daniel 12 earlier. It's going to be a time like never before, man, because it talks about what's that, Revelations 12, ultimately the enemy coming in like a great flood. So we ultimately have to cry until Yahawah BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI, but I just parked, brother, because it is kind of hard to hear when driving, but just to make that real quick, how ultimately the high priest was ultimately crying is, you continue to read down, ultimately what the people was crying to their to Yahawah BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI, the Israelites, that was in the land. Ultimately, we have to do the same thing, man, knowing that what great persecution is coming, man. But you got it right, Bayou.
So it says, I'm gonna just read to 25. 25 is a point pretty much. So it says, verse 21, then it would have pitied a man to see the falling down of the multitude of all sorts and the fear of the high priest being in such agony. They then called upon the Almighty Lord to keep the things committed of trust safe and sure for those that had committed them. Nevertheless, Heliodorus executed that which was decreed. Now, as he was there to present himself with his guard about the treasury, the Lord of spirits, the Prince of all power, caused a great apparition, so that all that presumed to come in with him were astonished at the power of the Most High God, and fainted, and were sore afraid. For there appeared unto them an horse with a terrible rider upon him, and adorned with a very fair covering. And he ran fiercely and smote at Heliodorus' forefeet. And it seemed that he that sat upon the horse had complete harness of gold.
Right. So the Most High Yahweh ultimately sent two angels down, to ultimately to get, Heliodorus that work, man. You know, and we have to ultimately have different accounts also where the Lord sent different angels down to protect, his people, man. And actually one I could think of, what was that back in the account of Genesis with Lot, when ultimately Lot was led out of Sodom and Gomorrah. When
That's the spirit, Doc.
What you supposed to say, Abaya?
That's the spirit, Doc. What's that, like Genesis 19?
Yeah, I believe like Genesis 19, last few verses, or somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
After the fall of during the fall of Sodom and Gomorrah, the angels told Lot to grab himself and his family. We ultimately know what ended up happening to Lot's wife, but ultimately escaping Sodom and Gomorrah, because it was going to be rained down with fire and brimstone.
Mm-hmm. So YAHAWASHI preserved him. Even when you read in Genesis 19 and verse 14,
Mm-hmm.
it says, and Lot went out and spake unto his sons-in-law, which married his daughters, and said, Up, get you out of this place, for Yahweh will destroy the city. But he seemed as one that mocked unto his sons-in-law. It's the same thing for the prophets, man, for the hopefully elect.
It's more to that out.
Khan, it says, and when the morning arose, then the angels hastened Lot, saying, Arise, take thy wife and thy two daughters, which are here, lest thou be consumed with the iniquity of the city.
Right. So, just like the account of Second Maccabees, the 3rd chapter we're reading, while ultimately the Lord sent two angels down to put the paps on Heliodorus. I'm just making this, just tying these two together, because ultimately what the Lord sends angels down, for the behalf of his elect, man. Because what does the scripture say? The angels campeth around them that fear him.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have divine protection for the elect. You're going to have the angels ultimately covering the elect of Yahweh BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI, man.
Yep.
Guiding the elect.
Yep. Psalms 34 and 7.
Yep.
The angel of Yahweh encampeth round about them that fear him, and delivereth them.
And exactly right, man. Hey, delivereth them, man. And ultimately, Yahweh BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI. Even in Daniel 12, it says what? The Lord is going to have the archangel Michael, stand up for the children of thy people, knowing that it's going to be a time like never before, man. So the Lord already has provisions for his elect, man. When things get rough, when things get hectic, the Lord ultimately has his angels round about, to protect his elect, man.
Con, I got a few more. Or did you want to keep going in that Maccabees?
Now, whatever's on your spirit, like if you want to bring those out first, we can get to it.
Oh yeah, no, we can get back to it. I think we left at 25 or 26. Moreover, two other young men appeared before him, notable in strength, excellent in beauty, and comely in apparel, who stood by him on either side, and scourged him continually, and gave him many sore stripes.
So they all beat his ass. We were just laughing about it. What was that at class yesterday? You got to be especially talking about this damn Edomite. You got to be a wicked ass nigga, for the Lord personally to send two angels down to whoop your ass. Yeah, but these are going to that Romans 15 we read earlier. Things are written aforetime, it's written for our learning. Hey, so we're going to be in hectic situations, man. Hey, we could be very well in concentration camps, man. We could be surrounded by military troops. So expect Yahweh BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI, man, to ultimately to lift up that divine intervention for his elect, man. If I make a quick hype, man, I grab this.
God, whatever you want.
59 and verse 19.
Jeremiah.
Isaiah 59:19. Isaiah 59 and 19. So shall they fear the name of the Lord Yahweh from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the spirit of the Lord Yahweh shall lift up a standing against them. Right back then, or during the time of what's that, Second Maccabees, the 3rd chapter which we're reading. Heliodorus, ultimately what? It's like he came in a great flood, man. Ultimately what? Trying to take what people had, man. And what this same thing is going to come around, man. Hey, it's many different instances where Esau Edom came in like a great flood. The enemy came in like a great flood. What was that doing? 70 AD, man. Doing as we're reading right here in this account of Second Maccabees, the 3rd chapter, man. Our different enemies, but this time around it's going to be worse, like anything we have seen, man. At Revelations 12 and 12, which we had quoted, man, the enemy coming in like a great flood, nor that he had but a short time, man. But ultimately, what the Lord YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI is going to lift up a standard against this damn devil, man. Hey, we're going to get spiritual powers, man. We're going to have ultimately help from the angels in heaven. YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI is going to lift up that standard. Hey, we're going to seem invisible to these people, man. Because YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI, you got to understand, man, the Lord can do anything, man, to protect us, man. Because like I mentioned, hey, some man may get spiritual power, as the camel being chased out. Hey, ultimately what? Angels coming down, beating, people ass, man. As the account we're reading in the Second Maccabees, the 3rd chapter. So you expect these different instances. That's the ultimately what the standard of YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI, man.
I got 2 for you real quick to back you up. It says Proverbs 18 and 10. The name of YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI is a strong tower. The righteous runneth into it and is safe.
Yep.
So the reputation of YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI, man, is going to protect us. It says Isaiah 59 and 1, behold, Yahweh's hand is not shortened that it cannot save, neither his ear heavy that it cannot hear. See, so there's nothing too hard for the Heavenly Father and His Son. Yep. It's nothing too hard for him. So that's why we got to have faith, and not doubt. The Lord doesn't want to see us doubting. Faith, it says faith and meekness are His delight.
Yep. And may I ask you, Ibaya, how you just said, the Lord doesn't want us to, how you say it, like the Lord doesn't want us to fear or to faint? Because it talks about that in, what's that, Sirach, the 2nd chapter? I forget how it was quoted. It says, if thy strength is small, you will not be.
That one, that's another one in the Proverbs, but in Sirach 2, it says, yeah, I think that's after.
About faint hands and feeble knees or something like that.
Yeah, right here. No.
But I know it's in Sirach, the 2nd chapter.
Yeah, it is for sure. Where it says, woe to him, he believeth not. Right here, verse 12, Sirach 2 and 12. Woe be to fearful hearts and faint hands, and the sinner that goeth 2 ways. Woe unto him that is faint-hearted, for he believeth not, therefore shall he not be defended.
Right. So ultimately, if you're second guessing YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI, one minute you say, oh yeah, YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI got me. Then the next minute, I'm like, I don't know if YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI got me. And I don't know if you're going to deliver me from this situation. You're not going to be defended, man. Your eggs has to be all in the basket for YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI. Hey, ultimately knowing within your mind that YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI is going to come through for me, man. Even if it means death, You have to have that in your mind, man. But if you ultimately being double-minded, man, YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI is going to do it for me. Then the second minute YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI, I don't know if he can do it for me. You're not going to be defended, man. In fact, you're going to be destroyed with the rest of these people.
Verse 14 says, woe unto you that have lost patience, and what will ye do when the Lord shall visit you?
Right. That's, really talking about, individuals that was amongst us, that took their hand off the plow and ultimately what? That ultimately lost that patience, man. Ultimately thought it wasn't worth it to continue to do this work, and they ultimately went back into the world, and they're going to be destroyed too, man. Because they lost patience. They didn't wait upon YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI.
Just read 15. It says, they that fear the Lord will not disobey his word.
And
they
they that ultimately obey, the Lord will not disobey his word, man. That's what the elect is doing in this time, man. They're presenting their bodies as a living sacrifice. They're ultimately, 10 toes down for YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI, doing the best, ultimately what? What's that? Judges 5 and 11, rehearsing the righteous acts of YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI, ultimately doing the best that they can to serve the Lord, man.
That's right.
Was it a little bit more to that second Maccabees, the 3rd chapter?
Yeah, there's a lot more. It says, verse 27, and Heliodorus fell suddenly into the ground and was compassed with great darkness. But they that were with him took him up and put him into a litter. Thus him that lately came with a great train, with all his guard into said treasury, they carried out, being unable to help himself with his weapons, and manifestly they acknowledged the power of God.
Right. So ultimately, it was nothing that this devil could do against, the Lord's people, man. YAHAWASHI, YAHAWASHI's people, And it reminds me of this scripture real quick, if I may grab it. This is the book of 2nd NEGROES 2 and verse 26. And it reads, "As for the servants whom I have given thee, there shall not one of them perish, for I will require them from among thy number," right? Talking about the elect. Verse 27 says, "Be not weary, for when the day of trouble and heaviness cometh, others shall weep and be sorrowful, but thou shalt be merry and have abundance." Right. So ultimately, when the day of trouble comes, we're ultimately in the beginning stages of the day of trouble, man, which is what? Jacob's trouble, man. But it says what? Be not weary, man. Don't worry about it, because ultimately, YAHAWASHI has provisions for his elect already, man. All we need to do is have faith, and we ultimately have to believe, man. It says, verse 28, "The heathen shall envy thee, but they shall not be able to do nothing against thee, saith the Lord." Right. What did this nigga Heliodorus thought he was finna do, man? He thought he was finna do something, but it came to no avail, man. He came in. I know he, through the spirit, he came in that bitch all confident. Man. And what happened at the end? He left with nothing, man.
He came with that great train with him.
Yeah, exactly. And we ultimately have to expect the same things during this time, man. And even much more greater, because it says what? That our deliverance is going to surpass that of what? Ancient Egypt, man. So what? If that's the case, so that means what? The miracles is going to be on a whole nother level also, man. The deliverance is going to be on a whole nother level. The
apparitions.
Yep. It says, verse 28, it says, "The heathen shall envy thee, but they shall not be able to do nothing against thee, saith the Lord Yahweh. My hand shall cover thee, so that thy children shall not see hell." All right, that's what the Lord is going to do for the elect in this time, man. The Lord is not going to allow his elect to be, just out there as, man. The Lord is going to have provisions. The Lord is going to have different things provided for the elect, man. Because he even talks about my servant shall eat, man. It talks about, hey, that Isaiah 59:19 we read, man. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Lord shall lift up a standard against him. So ultimately, expect these different things to come, especially in this time, man. The worst time to ever to be experienced on the planet Earth.
That's right. Right, man. We locked in. God, love me, all BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI.
Yep.
Lord willing, he keeps the spirit on us. Keeping myself first and foremost. We continue to do the right things. And YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI got us.
That's right. All right, bye. If you ain't have one, I got one. Can you grab for me? I know I believe it's like 2nd Maccabees 15:6. How what was that? I believe it was Judas Maccabees. I could be wrong. Ultimately encouraging the children of Israel.
Come on, let me go to the 15th chapter.
I know Rapaya bring this one out. The elder brother Rapaya bring this out a lot.
Oh, his prayer.
Yeah, yep. I believe it's 2nd Maccabees 15 and like 6 on down.
All right, 1st Maccabees 15:6. So Nicanor, in exceeding pride and haughtiness, determined to set up a public monument of his victory over Judas and them that were with him. But Maccabeus had ever sure confidence that the Lord would help him. Wherefore he exhorted his people not to fear the coming of the heathen against them, but to remember the help which in former times they had received from heaven, and now to expect the victory and aid which should come unto them from the Almighty.
Right, it says in former times, key phrase, in former times, man. Hey, just how, we was in captivity. Just look how, we was getting fucked up, obviously, but just look how the Lord, us coming out these different places, look how the Lord ultimately, delivered us out these said places, man. Under the hands of these heathens, man. And I had mentioned before, hey, this deliverance from Babylon the Great, which is America, is going to be like something that we have never seen before, man. what's that, Jeremiah 16? You know, no more said the Lord liveth that brought thee out of the land of Egypt, but out of the lands of the north, man. You know, but just to go back to the scripture, it says in former times, man. You know, how ultimately what the Lord put the spirit on our people, you know, fiery passion to get the victory over the enemy. And that only happens when our people was obedient to YAHAWASHI, man. You know, in this time, the Lord is going to come through for his elect, because those are the only ones of our people that's going to be obedient to YAHAWASHI, man. You know?
Con, just like how the whole city was repenting.
Yep.
They were all on one accord. They were calling on YAHAWASHI. You know, that's like the elect. Because now we're like the temple. The elect, the hopeful elect is like the temple now. You know? We're in Jerusalem. You know, and Jerusalem's about to be under siege, under attack, as in times past. So the elect is going to call on YAHAWASHI to save them out of that time of trouble.
Yep. Hey, Psalms, what's that? Psalms the 91st chapter, man. You know, and that's going to be ultimately what? Given to the elect, man, that divine protection.
And then if I may hit verse 9 too,
yes, sir.
It says, and so comforting them out of the law and the prophets. So comforting them out of the law and the prophets. And that's what we're doing, man. That's how you feed the sheep, you know. It says, and withal putting them in mind of the battles that they won afore, he made them more cheerful.
Yeah, made them more cheerful. Hey, because they even had a name. Hey, and that was the spirit too, because what? They was in that Romans 15 spirit, man. Hey, things are written aforetime is written for our learning, man. They was doing the same thing. They was ultimately looking at accounts of, oh, like, yeah, the Lord delivered this mighty man out this situation, delivered this mighty man out this situation. You see how each generation, man, these scriptures is our guide, man. Because they was literally doing the same thing. That's literally what they was doing, man. They was actually going back into the, you know, to this word, how the Lord YAHAWASHI delivered, you know, great men out of perilous situations, man. You know?
It's Yapa.
Man, call line me YAHAWASHI.
It shows you that it's all one word. You know, it's all one spirit. You know?
You had somebody by you?
I got a quick one. It just says right here, Psalms 55:16. As for me, I will call upon the Most High God, and Yahweh shall save me. Psalms 86:7. In the day of trouble, in the day of my trouble, I will call upon thee, for thou wilt answer me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thou answer me, man. You know, so ultimately what? That's why we need the names of YAHAWASHI. That's why the names of YAHAWASHI is so important, man. Because it talks about what? You know, the righteous run into it and it's safe. The name of the Lord is a strong tower, and the righteous run into it and it's safe. Hey, call on in that time if you want to, man. Call on Allah and these different strange guys in that time if you want to, man. Hey, you probably get a double destruction for even doing that shit, man. Now you will get a double destruction for doing that shit. It ain't no maybe, possibly. You're going to get a double destruction for calling on these different gods, man. You know?
Isaiah 42:8.
Yep. Only one name, you know, one power is going to deliver us out the situation, man. And that's Yahweh through his son, YAHAWASHI, man.
And only one power is going to be glorified from this situation. He's not going to give his glory to another, like all these strange gods the brothers mentioned.
Yep. Hey, you could type this into Blue Letter Bible. Is anything too hard for me?
Let me see. Bear with me. You know how it be sometimes. Here it is. Genesis 18. Oh, Khan, that's the spirit, man. Right back to this, Genesis 18. So this is when the Lord told Abraham that Sarah was going to conceive. So it says, verse 13, and the Yahweh said unto Abraham, wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, I shall of a surety bear a child, which am old. Is anything too hard for Yahweh? At the time appointed I will return unto thee, according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son.
Right, and the reason why, you know, told the brother to grab this, you know, key phrase is anything too hard for me. You know, because us being mortal men in the flesh, you might think, hey, I have exhausted all my things that I can do. It's nothing I can really do. You know, that's how, you know, mortal men think in the flesh. But YAHAWASHI, he can do all things, man. Because with the snap of a finger, hey, even quicker than that. I don't know anything quicker than a snap of a finger, but the Lord can change your situation in an instant, man. You know, 1 second you could be fucked up, and then the next minute you could be at the top of the fucking world, man. You know, but just to really say that it's nothing too hard for YAHAWASHI, man. You know, first minute you could be getting your ass beat by hundreds of Edomites, and the Lord what? Because he talks about in the scriptures, man. Hey, one shall chase 1,000.
Yeah.
You know, so it's nothing too hard for YAHAWASHI. The Lord can make you a mighty man in an instant, because it even says what? The feeble among you shall be as David, man. Hey, so you really have to think about these things. And going to the account of Heliodorus, man, you know, this Edomite, how he came in that bitch confident, thought he was finna do something. He left with his ass beat, man.
Angelic ass beating. You know, he almost dies, right? And then Onias actually prays for him.
Yeah.
Yahweh will not kill him. And then, you know, they all kind of they all acknowledged Yahweh, and he said, like, even if a man had an enemy, he should send him to this city to get that type of judgment, you know.
Yep.
So
exactly.
They knew. They felt the power of God for real.
And we're living in the times also, man, because ultimately all of this is just to glorify, you know, ultimately for the Lord to re-glorify his names back into the earth, man. You know, Yahweh, you know, what's that coming out of the land of Egypt? Everybody knew the name Yahweh, man. These heathens, you know, what's that? Rahab, the harlot,
That's
you know,
right,
Israelites, the spies that came into what was that? The land of Canaan. You know, she essentially said, yeah, we know what your power has done, and everybody was in fear, man. And the same thing is coming back, man. But this time, Yahweh's going to be glorified. His son YAHAWASHI's name is going to be glorified, man, in the planet Earth. You know,
right. Even Jonah too, when he's on the boat, when he told them that he served Yahweh, they got scared.
Yeah, yeah, you know? Because you gotta understand, hey, the power that, you know, ultimately created the heavens and the earth, man, it's not a power to be taken lightly, man. You know, and ultimately what he's going to show that power, hey, you know, on behalf of the elect, man, the miracles and things like that. But we're going to ultimately see what destruction on a wide scale that we have never seen before, man. You know, so ultimately, you know, going back to that Romans 15, man, things were in full time is written for our learning. And you go into a different accounts like 2 Maccabees, the 3rd chapter, going into Heliodorus, how he got his ass beat, man. And there's different accounts throughout the scriptures that we could look upon and ultimately what, you know, gather, you know, faith by looking at these different accounts. Like, damn, the Lord is going to come through for us also, man.
That's it.
But that's all I had, everybody. If you had something on,
that's all I got.
I'm gonna close this out.
BAHASHAM.
So with that being said, we hope this lesson was edifying. We're gonna end up giving all praise and glory to Yahweh.
BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM,
QADASH. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of great millstone that taught us this truth, and salutations to the hopeful elect that's around the 4 corners of the globe. We hope this lesson was edified. Till next time, call me YASHARAHLA. Shalom, Abba.
Shalom, Abba.